Hello and welcome back to El Partido, the Spanish football podcast. So yet another Spanish football podcast, I should say. It's a Champions League night and I've definitely had a couple of mouths tonight. So, apologies for that slip. I'm delighted to say I've been joined by my co-host, Paul McGarrahy, once again. How are you, Paul? How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, mate. I've got you on one screen. I've got a bit of some notes that I've made, because we are slightly organised. And then I've got another screen with the football on. So yeah, what's not to like? Oh, I've also got a pint as well. So I'm doing very well. It might be midweek, but it's a weekend somewhere, isn't it? So
absolutely. I'm also not, as some people may notice if they watch on YouTube, in my normal surrounds of my my attic, as it usually. I'm in a hotel down in Farnborough on a training course, so if I'm a bit echoey, I do apologise. But we've got a really great.
You sound better than normal, actually.
It's because I'm not sat in the loft with a very low ceiling and Malaga flags everywhere and things like that. So it's maybe a bit better of a scenario. So it's an improvement maybe, but. We've got a really good episode planned for today. We're doing something slightly different, focusing on a region of Spain, which I don't think we've necessarily done before. We've done sleeping giants, we've done clubs, but we've never really looked at an area of football and what it means. And we're delighted to be joined by Luke Chambers, my former GearyCast colleague, reunited once again with one of the best voices in podcasting, in my opinion. If you're watching on YouTube, as always, he's just down below. Luke, welcome to El Partido.
Pleasure to be here, Nick, and thank you for them very kind words. Paul, lovely to meet you in person again. Big fan of El Partido, boys. You're doing a great production here, and it's an honour to be asked to come on this time.
No, brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us as well. And you've got possibly one of the most, I want to say, unique football pages in Spanish football, Twitter and Instagram for me, Luke. Obviously, I know your affinity with Malaga. Obviously, we were co-hosts for a good 2 years of the GearyCast. When we were watching Malaga and Primera Federación on, back in the Spanish Segunda. Some brilliant times that we managed to watch Malaga together. But I know you've got a massive affinity for all things football, for non-league. I know that's a big thing for you back at home in the UK as well. So this new venture of Costa del Fútbol, which is what the episode is going to be named. Can you just explain to us sort of like what is Costa del Fútbol and what is it all about?
Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know me personally or anything, I'm a huge Malaga fan. I'm a Malaga season ticket. And as Nick's just rightly said, we were both on the GearyCast together, and we both effectively left in the summer. It's something I always enjoyed doing. And after leaving, I knew that I needed some more Spanish football fix. And like you've just rightly said, Nick, I have a real passion for the Costa del Sol, whether that's football, whether that's holidaying, like yourselves, drinking, just the pure love for the place. So I kind of came up with a project of Costa del Fútbol. This is based on my own experiences. So for many people who don't know, there is so many football clubs along the Costa del Sol. And like we all do, we all go on holiday. You fall in love with a place. And then you might think, I wonder if they've got a local team. I wonder how they're doing. I wonder what division they're in. That is where Costa del Fútbol comes in. So I try to simplify everything. I don't want to complicate things too much. I want to put out to people a bit of breaking news, a bit of serious news, manager appointments, I don't know, big injuries, not just somebody's left the staff canteen or something. I want to keep it as simple as we can, results, league tables, things like that. And I just feel there's so many football fans what do go on holiday, fall in love with a place, and then try to find out about this club, this town, this pueblo, and they can't actually find it. That is basically what the Costa del Fútbol is. And to be honest, I'm saying this now, I'll go back on it in a second. It purely was for holidaymakers, Brits, Gearys, ourselves. But I have grown a fantastic Spanish backing from teams like Torremolinos, Udi, Torre del Mar. These guys love social media, and for some reason, they love Costa del Fútbol, and I love them for that.
Yeah, and we love Costa del Football as well, don't we, Paul? Like I said, I don't know about your experiences, but we know when it comes to Costa del Sol, we know about Malaga, we know about their trials and tribulations and their successes and how big of a club they are. But to be honest, up until a few years ago, I wasn't even necessarily aware of some of the nuances of football on the Costa del Sol. Even Torremolinos were a team that were sort of like marooned into Tercera Federación and Segunda Federación more recently. Learning more about Los Beliches down in Fuengirola. There's plenty of football out there, Paul, that if you're on holiday in this area, which is a very popular destination, there's lots of football we could go watch.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I'm a big fan, Luke. I think it's only a matter of time before the tourist boards in the region get in touch with you and start, because it's not just like you say. A lot of the teams in the region, like people might have seen and come across in like the early rounds of the Copa del Rey, maybe heard the name, but what you're doing is you're bringing them to a wider audience in a bit more of a way that has, it's a nice part of the world here, so it's got good aesthetics that go with it as well, picturesque places and stuff. But you're right, you think of it in a, it's almost like it is a holiday, and looking through some of the pictures like on your the Instagram and stuff like that. I think it's fabulous, and it's really good to give color and coverage to smaller names, because like I say, Nick, we've all heard of Malaga, some more than others, but like it's opened doors to other clubs for holiday makers, and I'm one of these people who, if there's a ground nearby, I'm dragging my wife and daughter along to just, even if there's no game on, just to peer over the gates, like that's the thing, isn't it?
That is the main thing. That is the main thing. So when you are holidaying, etc., you can think, Torremolinos are playing at home this week. No, actually, I'm here. Have Torremolinos got a game? I can click on Costa del Football, have a little. Yeah, they're at home. I know a little bit about this club already. I know what division they're in, etc. It should be a decent game, this. For example, I fly out Saturday morning. Segunda have really kicked me in the balls the following week. I fly home 2 hours before Malaga kick off, so that hurts. However, the same day Torremolinos are at home to Ibiza. So as our El Pozo professional knows, that is a very, very big tie in that division. But when I was just making my notes, Nick, one of the examples what I use is obviously yourself. You go to La Cala de Mias. Mm-hmm. If you didn't know La Cala de Mias had a team, they are in the Tercera Andaluza Malaga Grupo 4. It's easy to find out where they play, etc. That is just one example of a holidaymaker who likes a pueblo and thinks, I wonder if they have got a game. And it can be that easy to find. And the coast, the Costa del Sol is such an amazing place for football. It really is. It is a ground upper's dream.
Yeah. One of the things, just to have to stop you there as well, is obviously, you draw people's attentions to the clubs that are in the pueblos as well, but you need to also mention whether they've got any decent club shops as well. Do they sell mugs? Do they sell scarves? The important details here, Luke.
The interesting thing is, since I have been a lot closer to these teams and that, something what I never actually knew. I've been to Torremolinos a few times. They do have scarves. But when you're digging deeper to like FC Marbella in Tercera, UD San Pedro in Tercera, you're thinking these aren't going to be selling pin badges and scarves and shirts. But every team sells nearly every kind of merchandise what you'd be able to find in a Segunda team or a La Liga team. The passion of the coast is unbelievable.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think ever since you sort of like brought it to life for me, it has been sort of like a bit of an eye-opener to say, well, actually, I obviously will go and watch Malaga play, but can I go and watch La Cala de Mias? Or I think the team that I am going to pump for here, Luke, is it Mias Las Lagunas? Just a bit further up, got a really nice, tidy ground there. So I think, even just for an evening, just to go, I'm going to go watch some football whilst I'm over there. I go over 4 or 5 times a year on family holidays. It's something else to do, which is absolutely brilliant. So I know Costa del Football is really bringing, that to life for people, which I applaud you for. Obviously, this is a football nostalgia podcast, so we couldn't have Costa del Football on without speaking about some absolute worldy football players who have played not only on the Costa del Sol, but are from the Costa del Sol. And there's 3 main ones here that I really want to talk to you guys about, starting with a chap who finished career, weirdly, just up the road from you, Paul, in Bolton, Fernando Hierro. who is just an absolute legend of the Costa del Sol, isn't he, Luke? You know, he was always destined for the top. He had a fantastic career with Real Madrid, you know, 3 Champions Leagues, 5 La Liga titles. He's just one of the best ever, isn't he?
Yeah, unbelievable player, leader. Born in Vélez Malaga, so just the other side of maybe the holiday side of Malaga, shall we say. Very much like his forgettable brothers, I guess. His 2 brothers, they were both professional footballers. I believe there was at Valladolid, and they never quite made it to Real. But one what definitely got away from the Malaga cantera. He was there for a year without ever really making the progression. Then moved up north and eventually found himself to Madrid to become, like you say, Nick, one of the greats.
Yeah, he was a stalwart that Madrid side for a very, very long time, Paul, and probably one of the first, you know, true Spanish football heroes that I came across. You know, again, we always seem to hark back to either Championship Manager or FIFA 2003, but you know, he was always one of those first signings I'd make on those kind of platforms. He was just an absolute unit for Real Madrid, and probably a big part of the success, or at least the foundation of the success that they would go on to have during the noughties.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 13 or 14 seasons that he's there, isn't it? And he comes in at a time. I forget he started senior career was at Valladolid as well, before going to Real Madrid. And he's there for 14 years. I think he joins 89, doesn't he? He's there till 2003. So he transcends all of the ups and downs of the 90s. And then as we get into, you know, remember last season, anybody who's been listening to the pod for a while, we did an episode on the Galacticos, and he's there on his way out, really, at the start of that, the Beckham era. I think they've got one season where they overlap, haven't they?
Yeah.
But he's fundamental to a lot of the success at the time. You know, he's a guy with 3 European Cups, isn't he? And 5 La Liga titles. And he's got a fantastic. If you ever look back, and it's only because, you know, whenever we do in these podcasts, a lot of the research I do is to actually just look at old photos to refresh my memory more than anything else. A lot of people might look at stats and stuff like that. I kind of, what we're about, the nostalgia lens, I like to go back to looking at the pictures and think back to, well, what can I remember of the time and how did I feel at the time? And what I noticed that I don't think is something that I'd ever really picked out with him before is that he has this amazing steely gaze in like 90% of the photos. He looks like he's ready for battle in so many of them. Yeah. Because he was really, wasn't he? So, you know, tremendous player.
It's like blue steel, isn't it? From like that, just that focus of him and things like that. And I suppose you kind of alluded to it a minute ago, where you know he said unfortunately he got away from the cantera of Malaga, and you know we do see this in a few instances with some of these top players who reach the pinnacle of Spanish football, and you know he is definitely someone who was missed by the club at that time. But we've got to remember as well that, you know, Malaga in this era weren't necessarily at the top of the game. They did get promotion back to La Liga. I think it was in 1989, but they weren't a formidable force back then. So you can see why people were pulled down that way. He did eventually end up back in Malaga. Obviously, he was the president during, I think, like the early 2010s. And that's quite a cool fit, isn't it? You know, to have, you know, a man of Hierro's stature as your club president of, you know, the club that he belongs to, that he's from, Vélez Malaga, you know, less than 10 miles away from La Rosaleda. It's a good fit, really. It's a shame he wasn't involved with Malaga more as a player.
Yeah. So I remember when he did come back, it was quite a surprise, but he came back as the director of football for Malaga. And he was only there for 1 year, interestingly, the 2011-2012 season. But it was a very successful year. Obviously, this was the build-up to the ultimate Champions League season. He unfortunately left after a phone call from his old buddy, Zinedine Zidane, who approached him to be the assistant manager of Real Madrid. I mean, why did he accept that? Why would anybody go and do that?
No, well, like I say, he's got one of those kind of strange managerial pathways. And let's not forget in the, I don't know if you guys remember the 2018 World Cup where Julian Lopetegui basically accepted the Real Madrid job. I think it was the Real Madrid job.
Yeah.
Before the tournament kicked off in Russia. And basically, the Spanish FA went, well, we're not having that. You can't put club over country right now. And they replaced him, and then he ended up being catapulted into the main job for the 2018 World Cup, which must have just been mental for him, really.
Yeah, I think you'd probably need to change your trousers, wouldn't you, if you're getting that phone call on the eve of World Cup? Yeah. Would you mind just picking up this, doing us a favour? But to be fair, look, I know a lot of people have obviously maybe look at it differently at the time, but Spain, like a lot of teams, didn't necessarily have the best of World Cup in 2018. But I don't think you could put that down to Hierro. It's and he has had an interesting post-playing career himself. But he's somebody who's well respected throughout the game anyway, for his understanding of the game. As much as his physical attributes that he had as a player, I think he's somebody who talks very well. Whenever you hear him in a press conference, he explains things in a way that you can understand, even if you're not somebody who is a highly trained professional footballer. You can grasp what he's getting at with his tactics, and that's not to sort of say that he uses like simple tactics or anything like that. It's just that he's a very good speaker, I think, and he's somebody who. I think he wears his heart on his sleeve anyway, which is how he always played. But I think he did that in his post-playing career as well. He says what he thinks. I don't think he's one who, tries to tiptoe delicately around subjects or anything like that when he's being interviewed.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose as well, from our own selfish perspective, we can't have, three chaps who live in the north of England without speaking about his time in the beautiful city or town. I can't quite remember which one it is. Of Bolton.
Don't oversell it. It's a town.
It's definitely a town. Maybe you learned some of that, tactical nuance from Sam Allardyce, because I still cannot remember or recall or even compute how Sam Allardyce and Sammy Lee managed to convince Fernando Hierro, JJ Kocher, Ivan Campo, and Yuri Djorkaeff to form this spine of a team during the early noughties. How did Fernando Hierro end up in the northwest of England? I do not understand. And I need you to explain it to me, Luke.
It was the crazy Sam Allardyce Galactico era, wasn't it? One of my personal favourites, what went to Bolton as well. Can you remember the Brazilian striker, dominated Portugal, Mario Jardel?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Bolton. I mean, he were absolutely dogger for Bolton. Just going back to Fernando Hierro and the Bolton move, this is where you have to really respect a player, and it's probably something what you don't see anymore. Obviously, now players come to the Premier League for money. You'll see somebody leaving Inter Milan and signing for Sunderland, examples like that. This is a guy who didn't need money. He captained the biggest, probably the best club in the world. He dominated, winning trophies. And then maybe at the age of 36-ish or something, he then had the cojones to go to the Premier League and challenge himself one more time. A lot of players would be scared to do that at that age, wouldn't they? Or like I say, these days it'd just be about money. Back then, for Fernando Hierro, nothing were about money. It were about pure challenge and playing under the leadership of Samio Aladicio.
Yeah, it was a very interesting time, wasn't it, Paul? And I think, maybe from, this is with respect, the years before Man City and Moneyball and stuff like that. You must be looking at Bolton quite enviously, thinking, how are they signing all these absolute legends when you're bringing in?
I'm not being funny at this point in time. So what was it, 2004, 2005? So they'd been in the Reebok, which I still call it the Reebok. I think it's called the Tough Sheet Stadium now, isn't it? Which is a ridiculous name for a stadium, but it is the Reebok. And at the time, I think the Reebok had only been open since about 97, 98. I think it might even been later than that. So it was still quite modern and everything, and it's got, it had an appeal. It was a challenge, and Hierro was somebody who I think always had a bit of humility about him when he played. So it was, like Luke says, a challenge. And we've all, I don't know if you've ever driven past that way on the motorway, and you can look over, because the stadium's quite a way out from the town centre of Bolton. You can see, I think it's near Horwich, isn't it? Towards Botany Bay and everything like that. Anybody who knows the local area, anybody who doesn't know the local area is thinking, what's he on about here? But you can see the stadium, and it does look like the floodlights are falling over. So maybe there was that sort of appeal to it. There's a little bit, there's a pub up the road that's been there for years. It does a great carvery as well. So maybe Allardyce took him there and they talked things out over a pint of gravy, and the deal was signed. I don't know. I thought it was great. I was a little bit jealous because also, we just lost Kevin Keegan as manager, and I think we replaced him with Stuart Pearce, which became a very difficult period of time for anybody who was a football fan to try and endure 2 seasons of Stuart Pearce ball. Don't matter if you were Sported City or not, it was particularly painful. There's a pull about Bolton, I guess. Back in that time, Elton John had done sellout gigs at the Reebok. Maybe that's what they showed for Hierro and come on, yeah, JJ Koch as well. Have a look at this. Look, Elton John's doing a gig here. Who wouldn't want to go there?
Yeah, it's always. I always do ponder. Yeah, I always do ponder where all these players lived. Like I say, did they live in Blackrod, or did they move to West Horton or something like that? Like again, a bit more nuanced local knowledge if you're from the northwest of England there. But it is quite baffling. One player who didn't move to Bolton anyway. We'll quickly move on to the next superstar from the Costa del Sol. So good they named a stadium after him, the Estadio Municipal Francisco Alarcón. Which Luke, I know you've been to in Benalmádena. Do you care to share with us who that is actually named after?
Yes, so it is actually named after the superstar of Isco, who he started his footballing life for Atletico Benamiel, the team who plays in Arroyo de la Miel, of course. He represented them from 5 years old till the age of 14, and the club, I'm not saying that they live off the fact that Isco came from there, but they are so proud of it. And why not? Come on, he's become a sensational footballer for, the last 15 years, shall we say now?
Yeah, he's a magician to watch, isn't he? I think he's one of those as well that, like, when you see him with the ball at his feet, he makes it look simple. I know we can talk about the ups and downs of his career and everything like that, but when he's on form, I think Isco is one of the most enjoyable players from the last 20 years to watch, and he's had some real magical moments, and it's actually quite pleasing. I think we've spoken about it before on this podcast, but I can't remember which particular episode. It was probably one of the occasions where we were waxing lyrical about Manuel Pellegrini.
Which time?
Yeah, try and narrow it down a bit. There's just something about the way that Isco's refound himself in the last couple of years. I think it's really, I'm really pleased to see it as well. And he's a player that was perennially linked with a move to Manchester City, almost like every summer for 10 years as well. So I just thought I'd chuck that in there.
He's the classic Spanish number 10. Which I know that you guys are big fans of. You spoke about several times, David Silva, Santi Cazorla, players like that, players what Spain just seem to make more and more and more of. And maybe that's what affected Isco making it. This is going to sound very silly because he's won absolutely everything. But from being the star of Real Madrid, from being a star of that Spanish team, there's that many good players similar to Isco. It's got to be so hard to break into that.
Yeah, it's a crowded part of the field, isn't it? And to think that Cazorla and Isco were in the same team at one point as well is just that's fantasy football.
Yeah, a stunning little ground as well for anybody who visits Benalmádena, Arroyo de la Miel. It is where Isco was born, where his career started at a young age, from 5-year-old till 14, played for in the yellow and blue shirts of Atletico, and they really appreciate everything what he's done for the club. Like you say, naming the stadium after it. He did actually open the stadium when it changed name from El Tomilar. But yeah, a real superstar on the Costa del.
Yeah, and obviously he's another one of these players who got away from Malaga temporarily, let's put it, because I'm sure we'll come on to his time in Malaga, but went to Valencia first. Again, we spoke about him, playing alongside Santi Cazorla, but he went to Valencia at a time where it was, David Villa, David Silva, all those kind of players that were there as well. He was in good company, really, wasn't he?
Yeah, massively. we were just saying, a very bold move from such a young player to go from the Costa del Sol, where not the easy route, but you've got Malaga there. He's obviously going to get picked up by Malaga, but a very bold move to go up to Valencia, where he was there to represent the B team more than anything with progression. Personally, I don't think that progression ever came in Valencia. I don't know if you guys agree.
Yeah, I think it's also tough, isn't it, really? Valencia in that period of time with the players that you've got in front of you and the expectation as well from the fans. I think we certainly in the first episode, Nick, where we talked about Valencia specifically, that the Mestalla's always been a stadium where there's people sometimes misinterpret it as entitlement. It's not entitlement, it's just expectation, and there's a demand from the fans there, I think. So he would have found it fairly difficult to break through to the team. Oh, that's my opinion. Others are available.
And then obviously he ends up going back to Malaga, from Valencia. I think they paid like 18 million euros for him as well, or something. Quite a hefty fee at a time when the Sheikh first came in with the millions to build this super Malaga squad. So, we look at where that Malaga team ended up, and I'm sure we'll come onto it, a little more later on. But how important was he, Luke, to, the success of that Malaga side that, went on to achieve what we would say as Malaga fans as Champions League glory, even though, they made the quarterfinals, but it was such a great, run they went on.
Yeah. And I'll be brutally honest, in my eyes, he was everything. He was the star of the team, young, raw, fearless. And to a lot of people, and this is the most important thing, as you'll know, Nick, as a Malaga fan, he's a Malaguista. He's one of their own, and that was so important to have a player such as himself, like you say, within the superstars of Joaquin Cazorla, to put a Malaguista in there as a young boy and to become the player what he has. For me, he really epitomised what Malaga were about at that time.
Yeah, and it seemed like just a good fit at the time, Paul. I think especially with the players that Malaga signed as well, around him, they complemented him really well, didn't they?
Yeah, definitely complemented him in terms of style, and I think as well, I'm sure this is something we talked about when we did the Malaga episode of this particular stint of the club. It was also like there was characters in that squad that helped him mature as a person as well. And I think he's spoken about it in particular about being surrounded by players who had the right attitude but enough experience as well that he could feel both empowered to take the ball himself and to be brave in situations rather than feeling the pressure to pass, but also were characters that were big enough or larger than enough for him to listen to when they gave advice out. I think that was key to his development. On and off the field, I think that spell at Malaga, and obviously, he's said several times himself that the coaching style of Pellegrini really aided him as well, because it made him feel confident in his own ability, which for a young player, I'd say is particularly trying to break into the first team is something that we've seen others perhaps struggle on, depending on who the manager is, or if the manager changes halfway through a season. You can see it 1 minute where this young prospect is looking like he's got the world at his feet, and the next minute he can't get a look in. Whereas with this goal, it was a particular defining moment of his career, I think.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree on that, and I think the very definition of great player is when Real Madrid look to the internal market as well. I mean, I'm not saying they've never signed a lot of Spanish football players, but especially during the second year of Galacticos that they were going through, for them to sign a player from Malaga was the ultimate compliment for him. I can never really read, Luke, the sort of like his time in the capital, because there were some bits where he was absolutely unplayable, and he was linked to, like you say, Paul, to Man City, to other elite European sides because of his performance. But there was other spells where he was quite barren and he was left out of the squad and you didn't see much of him, and that seemingly was the case towards the end of his time in the capital. But he was a superstar with this club, and he's got the trophy cabinet to go with it, hasn't he?
Yeah, the trophy cabinet speaks for itself. For me, personally, he was always a number 12 or 13, if that makes sense. A great sub, but never, I'm not saying not quite good enough, because I think you're absolutely unbelievable, but never quite enough to start regular. Obviously, there were so many big names who were coming out of the Galactico areas. A fantastic player, but I don't think Madrid ever believed in him until the back end of his Madrid days. He missed a lot of time due to injury, don't get me wrong, and maybe that played a huge factor of it. But I do remember his latter days with Madrid where people were really starting to talk and thinking, yeah, this is proper Isco. But I think it was more just game time more than anything.
I'd agree with that, actually. And I think as well, definitely it's worth mentioning, obviously, the impact that injuries can have. Because I think it was hamstring after hamstring. And that becomes almost psychosomatic, doesn't it, really? Is that you play within yourself, or you see players that start playing within themselves because they've had a repeat of the same injury over and over again. They don't feel that they can trust their body as much. And when your confidence is low at a club like Madrid, and there's the pressure on for you to do something magic every game, if you're not doing that, you quickly find yourself, on the bench because there's another player to take your place. I mean, I can remember the last football match that I was at in person, actually, before the world came to a stop for COVID in 2020. Was at the Bernabeu, actually, to see City beat Madrid 2-1. And Isco scored in that game, and he didn't really celebrate. He scored the opening goal, but he just kind of, I think, high-fived one of the players, or low-fived it, as he was jogging back. It wasn't like it was this outpour of an emotion. And, usually you see any goal that a player scores in the Champions League, they celebrate it like it's the first goal, really. And I think that was quite telling, because obviously he'd been going through a difficult spell there. But I think, there's always been this talent underneath it, and thankfully he's had this sort of not second win, but he's had this opportunity since leaving Madrid to really show that class is permanent, really, I guess, is the cliche that goes with it.
Yeah, because obviously there was that little bit in between as well where he left Real Madrid. He, some might say rather controversial, Luke, to certain quarters that we hang out in. He signed for Sevilla. Didn't really have a great time in Seville in that part of it. Got released in January after just 6 months of playing for the club. Almost signed for Union Berlin as well. I think he had a medical lined up, but they decided against it. And then spent 6 months, basically sat at home twiddling his thumbs. And it was only when, Manuel Pellegrini, picked up the phone and brought him to Real Betis, and people sort of went, this is quite interesting. Let's see what happens here. And as you alluded to, before, Luke, he just seemingly manages to get something out of Isco that nobody else can. It's like a match made in heaven with Pellegrini and Isco, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I still try and tell myself that Sevilla move never actually happened. It was just a really bad dream, and I'm sure a lot of Malaga fans will agree with that. I know Betis is based in Seville as well, but I don't mind Los Beticos. They're a very cool team. But yeah, you've said it spot on, Nick. I mean, obviously, the time what was a real struggle for Isco when he was clubless, there was quite a big link that he was going to maybe drop to Primera and sign for Malaga for 6 months. And luckily for him, I guess, that never progressed, and his career's really, really set off. I remember when he didn't have a club for those 6 months, just constant Instagram videos of him training in the gym. When you see a player whose career's over, just trying to get that one last push. And then the Betis move came, and I think you're an instant hit. I mean, have you just said, Nick, it's a match made in heaven, Pellegrini and Isco.
Yeah, and I think you'd probably agree with that as well, when you Paul, in terms of they just seem to get each other, and he knows, as you said earlier, how to use Isco, and he uses it to Real Betis' advantage, because Real Betis aren't a club that have, an infinite amount of money to go and make signings left, right, and centre. They've got to be very smart with their cash and be able to get a player of his quality in on a free. It was a pretty decent move for him. So, and it's paid dividends, because Real Betis have, they've reached a Conference League final. They've, finished in European places. He's managed to get himself back into the Spain team with Luis de la Fuentes. So, he's had a renaissance, hasn't he? Really, as a player at a grand old age, but still shows his quality.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of like, there's not many. There's a few careers nowadays that you tend to get like a like a happy ending or twilight. But I think for him now, he's had that moment where he can at least. I think if he retires tomorrow, I think he can retire quite proud of his the way that he signs off. It's kind of he's not just faded away. He's had the opportunity now. He can ride off into the sunset, can't he? That's the thing. And getting back into the Spain team is absolutely massive. From this summer just gone, I think that's something that's a testament to the turnaround that he's had in his fortune, and obviously I think there's like you mentioned there that the videos, and we see it with quite a lot of players, don't we? That they do the videos on Instagram of them training, come and sign me, and I think it's just it's one of those ones where it's worked out really well for him. I think he would agree with you as well that he probably wishes that or he pretends that stint at Sevilla never happened. Which, if I remember correctly as well, at the time, didn't Sevilla go all out to like make it like the biggest welcoming and everything ever? It was like Galatasaray style welcome of like fans turning up and him in the stadium kicking the ball around and stuff. Crazy. And then maybe a handful of appearances and gone in January.
Yeah, and to be fair, I don't blame Isco for that because Sevilla in the last few years have been an absolute box of cats of a football club. All the off-field issues, then leaking onto on-field. But I suppose you mentioned the R word there, Paul. I'll turn to you, Luke, to say before that happens, is there one last dance in Malaga for Isco? Do you reckon?
Whether it's head over heart, but I honestly think it will. I do. Just imagine, Nick, as a Malaga fan, the lift what it'll give the club. I just hope it happens rather sooner than later. I want the Isco was going to make a bit of a difference before he's too old, like Santi Cazorla did with Oviedo, like Lucas Perez did going back to Deportivo, going back home. You see it quite regular in Spain, don't you? Where in England you probably won't see, I don't know, Phil Foden instead of retiring at City, he might just go back to Stockport for a season or something like that. You never see that over here, but in Spain, it's became a romance of football.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm thinking about it now, and it does seem to be more in Spain than anywhere else I can think of. You're absolutely right. Before you said Phil Foden, I was thinking like, well, the closest I can really remember, and it's by nowhere near a par, is when Liverpool signed Ricky Lambert, and he got like 10 minutes a game and stuff like that, which I'm probably upsetting Ricky Lambert and a bunch of Liverpool fans there, but I think that's how it panned out. I can't think of any other examples where a player has come towards the end of his career in England and then gone to the team that they supported as a kid, but it does seem to happen in Spain, and I hope it does happen through Isco and Malaga. I think that'd be great. I mean unfortunately, though, the way that it's gone for Cazorla at Oviedo is that whoever the next player is to go back to a board club has got like they're gonna have to do something to top off that, aren't they, to compete with what Cazorla's done.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree with that. And like I say, I think what you said, Luke, head over heart. If I went with my heart, it's just would be just beautiful to see, and we'll see what the La Liga restrictions around that are because obviously there's Sammy Castaño who wanted to come back to Malaga, a top quality player, but wasn't allowed to because he wasn't allowed to play for less than half his wages, and Malaga have got obviously some funding issues at the minute, so the head is saying it probably won't happen, but we can dream. We can dream. Just going maybe on to the final player I want to talk about in terms of Costa del footballers in this, guys, is one that I don't think people would expect us to talk about. He's definitely well known, though. And if you do spend some time, walking around Fuengirola, you'll come across the bust of this man just outside one of the stadiums. And it's fair to say he's one of Spain's greatest ever players. And I'm, of course, talking about Juanito. He was born in Fuengirola before going on to have a spectacular career with the likes of Real Madrid. I think he started, if I remember rightly, in the cantera of Atletico, ironically, before moving to Burgos. But he was one of those where he captured the eyes of the nation, really, and became such a massive part of Real Madrid folklore as well, didn't he, Luke?
Yeah, El Genio de Fuengirola. I think that's how they say it, the genius of Fuengirola. Like you said then, he caught the nation in many, many ways, because this wasn't a simple footballer. No matter how great Juanito was, as I'm sure we're going to speak about, he was a very controversial character. But like you said, then Nick, he played for Fuengirola Los Boliche, and then made his way up to Madrid to play for Atleti, where his career kind of stalled. He was very, very young, but he suffered a really, really bad leg break. So I believe he was at Madrid for 3 years, making a couple of first team appearances. I think it was. Found his way at Burgos, and that is where his career really set off.
Yeah, there can't be too many players that have signed for Real Madrid from Burgos, Paul. I don't know if you know of it anymore. I know Michu's there as the director of football now, but I can't put my finger on too many that would make that move.
Yeah, you've got me there, to be honest with you. But it's also disguised nowadays, isn't it? Because some of them you see, they sign for the Castilla, don't they? So it's kind of they go under the radar a little bit. I can't think of any other, in recent memories other than what you've mentioned there. But a character though, a player with a lot of flair, wasn't he? And but he also had a fiery temperament.
A fantastic dribbler with the ball, and he really embodied, to especially to Real Madrid fans, sort of like what it meant to play for Real Madrid, which I think at this time, sort of like the late 80s, it's kind of where you start to see that transition for Real Madrid as a footballing institute into maybe a bit more of a commercial enterprise. It is probably the nice way I'll describe it. And Real Madrid fans, really still do love him. Obviously, unfortunately, he died quite young as well. He was only 37 back in 1992 when he died in a road accident. But even to this day, on the 7th minute, to sort of like keep his memory going, they chant his name. They go "Ia, Juanito Maravilla" in the stands at Santiago Bernabeu. So he did make a massive impression there, and I think a part of that, Luke, is for his football technical ability. He was a very interesting footballer and very technically gifted. He was also, as you've alluded to, very, very fiery, very, very temperamental. I think it can be summed up in his 2 European bans, which I don't think I can say any other player has ever had before. One for assaulting a referee and the other for stamping on the face of Lothar Matthäus, which I think not a lot of people can say.
I actually remember because I did a series on Costa del Fútbol called La Cantera, players from Costa del Sol, who's made it, etc., and did a lot of write-ups about Juanito, and this particular bit where any headline was says stamping on the face of Lothar Matthäus. I did remember at the time what Lothar Matthäus did do, but it's eluded me right now, but this is some serious shithousery from Juanito, isn't it?
Yeah, he just always had that I don't know, it's kind of like I don't want to say rage, but like he played beautiful football, didn't he, Paul? But he just had that bad side to him, which just haunted him for his entire career. Where I'm not saying, and I'll caveat this on this podcast because words can be used against you. He isn't a footballer like Duncan Ferguson in a technical ability, but he is a Duncan Ferguson in mood.
Because he just would, that's clickbait right there.
Yeah, he would just switch, wouldn't he, and just be like, right, I'm going to get in somebody's face right now. And I think that added to his character, didn't it?
I think that's quite an apt assessment there. To be honest with you, I don't want to add to it too much because, like you say, I feel like that's probably the neatest way of summarizing it. Tenacious as well. Like he was. I think one of the reasons why he's left such a lasting impression on Real Madrid as well is because they saw him as somebody who embodied a lot of what they wished other players had. The flair and the skill and the flashy side to it, but also didn't do things by halves and were impassioned enough to sometimes let their anger out on the opposition, I guess. That's just some elements of some football fan bases, isn't it? They're quite. You always hear it in a match like get into it, or you worst. I can't really repeat some of the main things that I hear, but like, yeah, he's just somebody that I think had it all and
some.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
What's the polite way? Yeah.
It can epitomise how good of a player he was and how much he meant to Madrid, because how many greats have Real Madrid lost over the years and probably don't sing out of respect for him, like Nick's just said, singing about Juanito every 7th minute. Juanito left Real Madrid a hell of a long time ago. There's younger fans who've never seen Juanito. Yeah. There's players who's passed since then who they won't sing about. And to me, at a club like Real Madrid, for the fans to remember him that much, he must have been an unbelievable talent for him.
Yeah, it was 92 when he passed away, wasn't it? So it's a long, I was only in nappies, I think, back then. No, maybe not. Maybe a little bit older than that, but yeah.
I think all three of us were at that point. He's definitely one of those players that, like you say, just he wore his heart on his sleeve, and he had that Andaluz passion as well, which I think you'll find in many players. You can see instances of Isco where he loses his rag and he looks like he's incandescent with rage. So it's it's probably normal for people from Andalusia to be this way. Sergio Ramos, I'll say no more. He did move back to the Costa Luke. Obviously, great to see, as we were talking before, players returning to their hometown clubs. He first went to Malaga, played there for 2 seasons, got them promoted back to the top flight in 1989, I think it was. Yeah. But more incredibly for me, knowing how small this club is in the grand scheme of things, in even in Costa del Fútbol terms, maybe, but going back and playing 5 games for Los Beliches, that must have been quite a unique experience for them to have a player who only 4 years beforehand was playing for Real Madrid.
Yeah, and I think it's like we spoke about earlier regarding players in Spain more than anywhere, respecting the roots and just remembering where they come from. I mean, for him going back to Fuengirola, Los Beliches, may it only have been for 5 games, it would have drawn those crowds back in. I know it wasn't all about money back then, but Fuengirola must have really benefited, not only having a great player, yes, in his latter years, but having an absolute legend come back. It must have purely helped the finances of the club as well.
Yeah. And I think we Matt wrote about that with Maradona playing for Granada, for example. At a time, Granada were a sort of like a lower echelon club, and having someone like Maradona just playing 1 game basically saved the club for the next 3 or 4 years. So it's interesting to see how many of those kind of appearances can have an impact for us. And obviously, there's loads of other players. We could have a 10-hour podcast on players who come from the Costa del Sol. You look at Javi Guerra, for example. He played for Cardiff in the last few years. Jesus Gamos, who was at Newcastle, Deportivo La Coruña, but also Malaga too. Less maybe said about Manolo Reina recently. I know, Paul, you'll think he's probably a bit of a legend for his time at Mallorca, but in Malaga circles, he became a bit of a joke very quickly for his short stint with the club.
Yeah. He his stock at Mallorca was quite high at one point. It was the right time for him to move when he did move on. But obviously he was one of the leaders in the dressing room that was with the club at a point in time where the backs were against the wall, trying to come back up to the Primera, and then went down with us and then back up again. But I know his career at Malaga was not quite as.
Yeah. It was nice of you to butter. It was nice of you to butter his gloves before he signed for Malaga. Thanks for that one, pal.
I do remember as well. Didn't he get a lot of abuse? Was it one of the last games of the season as well, where you literally accused him of chucking it into the back of the net? I think.
I don't think he even lasted the season. It was about.
Was
Christmas
it not the season? Is it that? Because there was the video, wasn't he, where he was stood almost confronting the fans, wasn't he? I think.
Well, when they announced the signing of him, obviously, being Mallorca's number 1 for several years, we thought this is what we need. Malaga had got the little black book out. Anybody who had any kind of Malaga postcode at any time in their career, Malaga was signing at that time. Manolo coming back, granted, old, but goalkeepers peak later on in life, and we thought because at the time we were struggling for goalkeepers. We had Ruben Yanez, who turned out to be a great, great player for us, but Manolo was going to be the leader, and as Nick said, it were a disaster from start to finish, to be honest.
Yeah, he was I can't even put into words how bad. And he was on a lump sum as well. As far as Malaga don't pay massive wages, but Malo Moreno was on good money to come here as well, and it was one of those where it just didn't work out. And unfortunately, we did get Ruben Yanez, but in all things, Malaga, he has a good half a season and gets snapped up by Sporting Gijon. So yeah. Those are the things that happen here. We managed to keep Alfonso Herrero, though, Luke, and I suppose we can't have you on the podcast without speaking about Malaga. We know how passionate you are about Malaga, part of the Peña Caruella, season ticket holder. We've done the Gimme Cast together. We go on trips together to watch Malaga. In terms of Costa del Fútbol, they are the Costa del Fútbol club, aren't they, really, in the grand scheme of things? Because they are a one-club city in the bigger picture.
Yeah, I refer to them as the capital of the Costa del Sol. Whether that's factually true or not, I don't know. But the nice thing about the Costa del Sol is every fan is so passionate about their own little club, their Peña clubs, but 90% of them are Malaguistas. They are all Malaga fans. They don't put Malaga ahead of Torremolinos, ahead of Marbella, etc. But they all want Malaga to do well. Like around here, I mean, where I live in Doncaster, you've got Barnsley, 2 Sheffield clubs, Rotherham. We all hate each other. You don't get that in Spain. Yes, there will be corners of Spain where they all do hate each other, but thankfully the Costa del Sol, I personally believe, is a big family, can I say?
Yeah, well, and it's not unusual as well. And there was obviously an agreement a couple of years ago that Malaga went out to, the likes of Torremolinos, all the way down to the Benamiels, all the way down to San Pedro's, where basically they've given them a route to say, progress your players through your first teams. If they're good enough, we can excel them to be part of Malaga as well. So they have really made a culture of success out of, I suppose, learning from the lessons we were talking about before, where they've lost, Fernando Hierro to Real Valladolid. They've lost Isco to Valencia. More and more players that were coming through the Malaga cantera ended up going to elsewhere, but actually they're now trying to protect themselves. And I suppose Antonito is maybe the one recently that we can pin our hat on and say, well, that is a Malaga player who made it at Malaga before going on to pastures new.
Yeah, and like you've just said, Nick, the agreements with the local clubs is to ensure that the Iscos of the world do not slip through Malaga's hands. I mean, they've got links with basically every club in the Costa del Sol, even as far as Antequera. They're doing the right things. Malaga are a club who aren't always doing good things behind the scenes, but regarding youth and regarding the cantera of Malaga, it's regarded as one of the best in Spain, and I fully believe that they are one of the main reasons why Malaga are still a club these days.
No, I 100% agree on that as well. And I suppose from obviously I know your story with Malaga. You never claimed to be around the time when they were in the Champions League, but it's fun to look back at those memories. But it is a club that's rich in history, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely turbulent being a Malaga fan. You have your ups and downs. We have experienced the majority of things, but yeah, the going back to 2011, 2012 season was something else. I remember Malaga grabbing a last-minute equaliser in the Bernabeu to draw 1-1 the season before we got beat 7-0 in the Bernabeu. I think that shows just how big the summer of 2012 was for the club and where we eventually went.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And it's a long way down, and we've been, as you've already mentioned, we've been down El Pozo, we've been, to Primera Federación, which, a few other massive clubs have been to as well. There's a good feeling around the club at the minute. It may be ebbing so slightly. I know I'm Mr. Negativity, and if we were doing the Giri Castle now, Luke, I would be the one probably calling for Pace's head at the moment. But I'll keep my cool on El Partido. Maybe just to round off from a Costa del Fútbol perspective, Paul. There are several clubs down there. If you had to go to, let's say one of them, Paul, who would you like to visit on the Costa del Fútbol?
Do you think I can say somebody other than Malaga? Just with the two of you. Look, you're spoiled for choice, though, aren't you? You're spoiled for choice. That's the thing. I don't know if I'd pick one. I think I'd struggle. I'd maybe if they could, they do that staggered fixtures. If they all tie together, I think I'd love to do a weekend where you can get 4 games or so in. 5 games if your wife lets you.
Yeah, and it is good for that down there. To be fair, like I said, I've been looking from a
distance wise,
Yeah, well, even if you hire a car as well, and I'm not going to advertise a particular car company, but there is one. If you fancy to know which one it is, it's quite reasonable. Luke knows which one I'm talking about. Then I can point you in the right direction. But I'm not on commission, I promise. But
I think just when you say, Nick, regarding the football in Costa del Sol, I think our good friend Matt Harrison can vouch for this, as it's his hometown. But I personally think football in Marbella right now is great. There's so many teams of all levels who have really progressed in the last couple of seasons as well. And the announcement of the Nuevo Estadio Marbella finally getting built in the next few years. Teams like FC Marbella, UD San Pedro, there's a hell of a lot of football in the Marbella area, and I believe ground hopping around that area would be fantastic for the weekend.
Yeah, and not too far from Estepona as well, which again, I drove past their stadium. Which if you're going down the Avenida del Mediterranean, you can see their stadium from the road, and it's quite a nice little ground actually in terms of its thing. I saw their game. They had a playoff semi-final against Cacereño last season, and it got a bit wild. But all I stood there thinking was, that ground looks great. I'm definitely going there next time I'm on the Costa del Sol. So I'm making it my personal pilgrimage to go down to there. But there are so many great places you can visit. El Pozuelo for Torremolinos, or whether even you go to like Vélez Malaga or to Rincón de Victoria. There's so many good clubs that you could go and watch. So we would definitely recommend going watching football down the Costa del Sol. We would definitely recommend following Costa del Football if you want to learn more about the football down there. And Luke, I will say thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's been delightful to learn more about the Costa del Football, because even I don't know about half of the clubs that are down there, and I spend every summer, Easter and October on the Costa del Sol, so it's been refreshing.
It's been a pleasure, guys. I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate your kind words about Costa del Football.
Yeah, it's great stuff, Luke.
And yes, and I will say thank you to you, Paul, not just for joining me for another evening of talking about the football nostalgia, but also we've obviously launched this fantastic brand new issue 1 of Revista El Partido. I don't know if you want to give the listeners a bit of insight of what that magazine is all about and where they can find it.
Yeah, it's well, first of all, they can get it for free on the Patreon, and I'd highly recommend it. It's stunning artwork and presentation done by Nick. It's lovely curated, I think is the word. But there's articles in there all about Yecla. There's the World Cup of beers, of Spanish beers, in fact. It's not a World Cup then, is it? Yeah. A cup of Spanish beers. There's David Silva's time at Eibar. There's Maradona in Granada. There's kits. There's all sorts. It's very colourful. And you know what? It doesn't take up any space on your coffee table because it's a digital magazine, and it's well worth the free price that you can get it for. So I'd recommend everybody checks that out. And it is the first one, and hopefully there'll be many more. We're already starting to work on issue 2, and it's been really enjoyable to be able to put out some content in a different format. So yeah, give it a read, let us know what you think, and tell your friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've written the word free more on social media recently, just because I think when people read the word Patreon, they go, oh, it's going to cost me $5 a month. I'm not doing that. But I was like, no, it's free. It's just on Patreon because it's the only place I can put it that sort of like hosts that kind of thing. So
that's the thing people need to know. It's not it's not a grift. It's literally we needed somewhere that we could put out something in a different form of format that wasn't a video or wasn't audio, and Patreon was just the simplest way of doing it. But the good thing is, if you register up on the Patreon, you get that sort of content, but you can still get the video or the audio on there emailed to you when it comes out. So it's all in one place, nice and easy. There you go. I never worked in sales.
I'm not on commission, guys, but I've received the magazine. I haven't read it yet, but I flicked through it, and the boys have done a fantastic job. They have.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you very much.
I think the bit we were most excited about as well, Paul, is that when you do move the pages. So again, this isn't any standard PDF. This is actual magazine. You flip through the pages and it makes a page turning noise on your phone. So it gives all the hallmarks of a magazine, on the computer of your phone. And I have worked in sales, so there it is for you. Go and watch it, go and read it, go to Patreon, become a free member, and have a good read of Revista El Partido. But for now, I'll say thank you very much to both of you guys. I'll say gracias to everybody at home for listening once again. We'll see you soon once again here on El Partido. Hasta luego.